Hello there, and welcome to today's video, which is an autistic ramble with my friend Lisle, also known as Dr. Lisle. And I'm sure many of you will recognise Lisle as she's a regular contributor to Autistic Jenny's collab videos. So without any further ado, here are our Autistic Ramblings. Lisle, welcome to Creative Autistic. I feel like we have known each other for so long and we've just been speaking for a little while before we started this interview. So I've been looking forward to seeing you on Zoom for so long. So thank you for joining us today.
I'm so glad to be here. You're such a kindred spirit.
I've just got a few questions for you, if that's okay, but please feel free to ramble because that's that's the point in Autistic Ramblings. So, so my first question is, although you're here in the capacity of a friend today, I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about your professional backgrounds.
Sure. Well, for the last 40 years, I've been a psychotherapist, a professional counselor, a professor of counselor education, and I directed a doc program in counselor education and supervision.
Wow.
And now I'm semi-retired because post-menopause, I just couldn't keep up anymore. But I'm still teaching the creative and expressive arts in individual and group counseling and loving that. And I'm still seeing some clients, but it's much less than the last 40 years.
Wow, it sounds just so fascinating to me because I feel like had I not gone into studying in the creative arts, yeah, there's part of me that would have loved to go into perhaps counselling and psychotherapy or psychology. I find it just all so fascinating.
It is. It is. I think as autistic people, we've been trying to figure out the human race all our lives. And I think that's why a lot of us are attracted to the field. And also we use arts to help us process this
Yeah,
crazy world
yeah,
that we don't feel at home in.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Liesl, how did you come to realise you're autistic?
Yeah. Well, in a sense, and I don't know if you can relate to this and any of you listeners can relate, but I mean, on the one hand, I've always known, but I just didn't know what the word was,
Yeah,
And I think that I always thought my quirkiness, my inability to understand what's going on and why is it like this had to do with my birth situation. I grew in my mom when my brother Stephen was dying of leukemia. I've shared that with you.
gosh.
And he died when he was 7 and I was born a month later. So,
Oh,
there's a
wow.
lot of in utero trauma that may explain, some of it. In
Yeah,
fact, the person who tested me clarified that, definitely there's clearly some impact of that, but it's not enough to
right.
explain the specifically autistic traits
Yeah,
that you have. But I I I think what brought me to a crisis was the emerging information. I mean, I'm in this field, so the emerging information that was coming up about women with autism and being like, huh, you know, hmm, that sounds
yeah.
like me. And then when some feedback from my oldest son, who's married and has a family, and kind of he's in my field, and he decided to give me feedback about you know me, and he
Wow.
described these autistic traits, and I went into a crisis because my highest values of being a good mother, and I tried so hard, and there certainly were some deficits there, but I think that that's what everything converged at once. This is a long answer, where I had an epiphany that maybe I'm autistic, and then my son giving me a list of autistic traits and how they impacted him, and deciding, okay, I want to, sorry, there's a phone call and I'm just gonna
Okay.
click that off. Um, I need to find out about this. So then finding like somebody who specializes in autism in women, and I did, and we went through it. And in
Wow.
the end, she was like, if anyone, any clinical psychologist assessed you, they would come up with the fact that you're autistic. It's not just the impact of your birth situation, and
Wow, that's
early
really
bonding.
powerful. So
Yeah.
what was the assessment and sort of diagnosis process like for you? Was it a positive experience? I'm assuming so.
Um, yeah, I was really fortunate, I feel like, Lizzie. First of all, I
Yeah.
had the means that I could get a private assessment.
Yeah.
In the United States, things are different than the
Yeah,
UK.
I don't know much about the process actually in America.
Right.
I'd be interested to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, yeah. So, it was very intense.
Yeah.
Lots of assessment forms, lots of time together. I had to also go, I had 3 hours with her in person, but lots of hours virtually. She met with, you know I'm 62. My parents aren't alive anymore, so it was harder for her to get any kind of collaborative, developmental
Yeah, I
information.
had yeah, similar issues
And
there
that makes
actually,
it
yeah.
kind of tricky because we know, you're born with autism. It's not the
Yeah.
result of blah, blah, blah. Um, and David, my prince, she met with, and also um, my longest standing friend, who that's a fun story in itself, which we won't get into. Um, but in the end, and I'm telling you, Lizzie, I went back 3 times after, like, okay, can we make sure that it's not because I had about 40 years ago been diagnosed with OCD, but it never really fit. Mine
Yeah,
was more
yeah.
rigid and repetitive routine,
Yeah.
uh, social differences. Um, but in the end, she's like, Lisa, you're autistic. And what was really neat about her was I had asked her early on, Lizzie, and I recommend this, folks who are listening, if you haven't got assessed yet. I asked her if I could record my sessions with her because my executive
Oh,
coach,
wow. I
and
really wish in hindsight I'd recorded mine. I really
I
do.
have I have watched them. I have 4 recorded sessions where in the end she's like, "Okay, just fast forward to this point, Lisa. You are autistic. It's
Yeah,
not this, it's not this, it's not this." So she's really wonderful,
yeah.
and so the process was very thorough, and it was very collaborative. She was very honoring of me. She considered me the expert on me.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, altogether, it was really, really wonderful.
That's so nice to hear. I think for me, my experience was a little different. The assessor I had was really lovely. She was really warm and really understanding, and I'm so grateful to have had her. She was a psychiatrist um, that I saw through Right to Choose, which is it's like a private service that's paid for by our National Health Service because there's just so many people on the waiting list. Um, but it was the process that I found overwhelming. For whatever reason, I took ages to fill out the assessment forms, and I mean over 6 months. So I think there was some kind of reluctance within me. I don't know. I'm still trying to sort of work through that, but I found it actually really emotional a process, and yeah, I'd say traumatic at times. I just hadn't appreciated, I guess, how much I'd have to, I don't know, just go through what I'd been through in my life. So it was, yeah, quite a difficult process. And I wish I'd had realised that before I started on it. But it's so difficult to tell because we all have our own unique experiences with
Yeah.
diagnosis if we do go for a diagnosis. And I've heard positive stories such as your own, and I know that Neil at Autistic Not Alien has a far more challenging time with his. So
Mhm.
it's really interesting to hear the different perspectives on getting a diagnosis. Really,
I agree, and I understand what you're you're saying about the trauma of it, in a sense,
Mm.
it's like you have to go on this archaeological dig about your life,
Yeah.
And it is, and when you look at your life and everything you've been through and just
Yeah.
how hard, hard, hard it's been, and all the ways we've coped, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the lack of
It's a very
understanding.
tricky process for
And I
many
think
of
it's
us.
gonna be harder now, moving
Yeah.
forward, for people who are getting assessed now with all of this confusion in the field about what is autism and what isn't, and what, now we're looking back at almost, the Canner model. There's,
Right.
the level 3 intellectual disabilities, and that schluffles us all out to, you know,
Yeah,
something
it's
else.
tricky, isn't it? I feel like at times, yeah, it's just clarity that we need, and it's difficult when everything gets so kind of jumbled, really. Yeah. Um, how has knowing you're autistic changed your life?
Yeah.
I imagine
I
in very many ways.
Oh my goodness. First of all, it has linked me to a community like you and others who are so precious, so caring, so wanting to keep us feeling like we're human and not
Okay.
subhuman in some way. It has, I have to say, I don't know if you deal with this, and I think a lot of autistic people do. We need veracity. We need absolute truth about things. We need things to line up and be systematized. So I think I could still, in my grief, um, I can still buffer around just sort of grief of not knowing for so long, and
Yeah.
still being in a situation with family, with community, with professional, where I feel like I have to hide. I feel like I it's not understood. It's not like we get some kind of medical diagnosis and everybody understands the trajectory forward.
Yeah.
This is not understood. And
Yeah.
so, on the one hand, I feel so validated, so delighted. So, I feel like a butterfly flying and I'm owning my colors. And it's
Yeah.
very the poetry and blue sky. And then on the other hand, there is such unbearable grief,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I feel like for me, and I'm sure you'll be able to resonate, or maybe you won't, but I feel like I would have definitely made different decisions in my life had I known that I was autistic, and yeah, I think that for me is one of the big ones that I'm having to learn to kind of live with, really. Um, that's not to say my life would have ended up any better or worse. It perhaps would have just have been different. And yeah, it's difficult. But then, I do try and be positive. I met my prince, Ian, and we have a lovely life together. And I feel like not only is he my partner, he's very much my carer these
Yeah,
days. And I'm fortunate in that I get a lot of my autism needs met, through having a person that's able to help me navigate life, really. But yeah, I can't help also but wonder if only I'd known. And I think that's so common in among late diagnosed autistic people.
I know you can go back, speaking of the archaeological dig, you can
Yeah,
go back to every stage of development when it right when it got more complex than we could understand and fathom
yeah,
and process. And if, and you could sort of see how the dominoes and how things went, and
yeah,
and it's like you so often talk about in your channel, how do we now have compassion, for our souls, and stay embodied in who we are and embrace that while we carry,
yeah.
all that trauma, in a sense.
Yeah, it's identity crisis, or it can be, really. a late diagnosis. And but for me also, my autism diagnosis has been so profound in so many ways, because it explains also why I have dreadful proprioception. And for instance, I've always struggled traveling in a car, and my anxiety goes through the roof, and I had situational mutism as a child. I wasn't able to talk in a car, and it's just explaining so much. And I know that many people will describe their experience of autism as a difference, but for me, absolutely it is a difference, but it is a disability, and everybody has the right to describe their own experience of autism as they want to, and what's meaningful for them. But autism is absolutely a disability for me.
I so agree. I so
Mm.
agree. And it's not just the social model of disability, which is,
Yeah,
i-
yeah,
i- we are definitely disabled by society, and then the internalized ableism, and that's a layer of it. But for me, I am really disabled in some ways, and I think that when you say it and I say it and there's compassion for us, and you just said, I would have done things differently.
mm,
Um, there's so many, I could see that I have been carried along, by this river of grace, when I
yeah,
think about
yeah,
David, when I think about my profession, but when I think about myself in certain ways, as a mother, for instance, as you
yeah,
know, I was not equipped in some ways. I mean, I love them, and my boys would say, I knew you were crazy about me and you're always there. But that big picture, I couldn't orient myself once I hit junior high. Elementary school, fine. Okay.
yeah,
But once I
yeah,
hit junior high and the complexity, the social processing,
yes,
the
yeah,
understanding of the big picture and the things you could do. No, I was
yeah,
like a refugee in a foreign land, you know.
yeah,
And so there are things that I I can own that uh I did, I throw tomatoes at me, but I don't think I was the greatest mother in the whole world
right,
compared to a lot of women that I know. And
yeah,
I know there's a lot of autistic women that are wonderful mothers. So I'm not
absolutely,
talking about
yeah,
autistic people. I'm talking about
yeah,
me,
yeah.
Liesel, you
Your
know.
honesty is just so powerful here, Liesl. Whenever I see you, I think, gosh, Liesl, I think would be an amazing mum. So it's just interesting to hear your own reflections, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Liesl, an area of interest for me is autistic menopause. I wonder if you could share with us your experience of the autistic perimenopause and menopause and what it's been like.
We've really connected on this, because we were both reading Rachel's book, and I
Yeah,
had, Rachel and I have a lot in common in some of, her ways of being rigid, and she's not in menopause yet, but she worked
yeah,
with somebody who specialized when writing that book. I have a really interesting perimenopause story where, as an athlete, as a runner, um, and during a very stressful time in my life when we moved states and I took a new position, um, I, and my rigidity and repetitiveness, my periods. I don't know how much of this you're going to say on camera, but
no, that's fine.
I'll just tell you. Um, I've always kind of been highly, highly sensitive in my body
Yeah,
and repetitive around my eating and my running, and somebody who thought I had an eating disorder, but again, that's when I was diagnosed as OCD, and now the person who tested me said, no, you fit under the autism profile around food
yeah,
and
yeah.
body sensitivity. All that to say, I could not stand my period.
Mm,
When I got my period, I was like, what is
yeah,
this? This
yeah,
cannot. And I think
Yeah.
unconsciously I figured out at some point, and there were years where it was regular and regular, but during this time of stress, so at about 45 when we moved here, my I did not get a period. I stopped getting a period at 45.
Yeah.
So up until now, I'm 62, a very, very few periods, which was fine for me because I couldn't stand the way I felt when I had my period. I couldn't
Yeah.
stand it. I couldn't bear it. So my perimenopause was a little bit different because I wasn't menstruating, although I still had estrogen and progesterone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I have no estrogen.
Right. And what's
And
that
that
like for you?
Well, the estrogen hormone is that tend and befriend hormone. It's like,
Yeah.
come and I will, you know. Um, and so when you think about autistic traits, for me, some of the things that are really intense are my sensitive, my sense, my alexithymia, my interoceptive problems, proprioceptive problems, my extreme visceral sensitivity, my sensitivity to my body.
Yeah.
Like that is on steroids now. I am so rigid. I am social stuff. I can push myself through because I have a gift. Like you have a gift with your art, and it's like brilliant. It's brilliant. I have a gift where even though I'm autistic, presenting, teaching, I could go in front of a crowd and speak about what I know, and nothing, it doesn't affect me at all.
I
But
would
what the
love that skill.
but the stuff before that everybody's doing, everybody's having a meal, everybody's walking on the beach, everybody, no, I
Yeah.
don't I don't want to be with people. I
Yeah.
don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy what you're talking about. I don't even know what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
want to be in nature where the sky is blue, where the birds are singing. I want to pet my bunny. I want to read what I'm interested in. And so all that to say, menopause has autism is like intensified. All
Yeah.
my autistic traits are intensified. And supposedly, Rachel, and I forgot the other woman who wrote with her,
It's Julie. Julie
Julie.
Gamble Turner.
I
Yeah.
know you haven't had an interview with them. I'm so looking forward to that. Um, they say that supposedly it kind of gets a little better.
Yeah, not always, not in every case, but from their research or from speaking with their autistic menopause experts or people who are autistic and in menopause or beyond menopause, it was a common finding that they felt, I don't know if better is the right word after or post menopause, but certainly they were starting to get more of a sense of feeling like themselves. Although they, I think it was really important to stress that the sense of self that somebody might feel in post menopause isn't the same as they were pre menopause. So it is
Mm.
like they feel like a slightly different version of themselves, sure, but they feel better coming out of the other end of perimenopause. I don't know if that quite makes sense,
Oh, it
really,
makes
but
perfect
yeah,
sense. And
yeah,
I kind of grabbed onto the sense of self issue that we've dealt
yeah,
with all of our lives,
yeah, yeah. And I feel like for me, that's the biggie with perimenopause. I definitely feel like a different person, certainly a lot of the time, compared to, say, my 35-year-old self. I just struggle way more with stuff now. And I think I'm coming to the realization that although I've blamed MCAS for me feeling dreadful most of the time in the last I don't know 4 or 5 years, I'm starting to realise that excuse me, a lot of it is actually autistic burnout, really, and this is something that has only I don't know, I've only realised recently that it is, part MCAS and part burnout, really. So, and I think that's, common. I think
Yeah.
going through perimenopause is just exhausting. For for the neurotypical woman or, AFAB person. But when you're autistic, there's just so much more on top to contend with. It's exhausting, I feel.
Wearisome is the
Yeah,
word that comes to me.
yeah,
So
yeah.
weary. Like, oh, we still have old age and
And
uh-oh.
everything hurts. And,
Everything does hurt. I
yeah,
know. And I can't run anymore. Running has been my poetry in motion. It's been my therapy. It's been my, oh, I'm back to my soul. And
I
walking
love
isn't
it.
quite the same, but it is what it
Yeah.
is. I can't.
It's interesting you mentioned running. I've over the last few years got into jogging and slow jogging at that, but it's like a stim. I just enjoy it so much. I'm able to dissociate from my surroundings and it's meditative, but because I've got a frozen shoulder, thanks to
Oh,
perimenopause, it really aggravates it. So I'm just not able to do it at the moment, which is frustrating. But no, I totally get your love of running, and I don't know, I wish I'd discovered it years ago, but it's only made sense to me quite recently, really. But I'm hoping that once this is sorted out, I can start
I
jogging
hope
again
so
because I love
too.
it.
Yeah, it is stimming for me.
Yeah,
I'm such an active person. That's my biggest stimming. So I've traded running for walking.
yeah, I do a lot of walking.
It helps.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah, in nature as well, where possible.
Ugh,
Um, okay, then moving on. What are the benefits of therapy for autistic people, Liesl?
yeah. Well, we know when it's not beneficial, right? Right?
Yeah,
I think ideally, autistic people need autistic therapists because no
yeah,
one understands the lived experience of being autistic. I'm certainly somebody who is really highly trained in it. But again, in the field, it's really just emerging now, an understanding of autism in women. And there's still so many questions about it that I think a lot of clinicians are confused.
mm,
But when you think about, what's beneficial, what's therapeutic is shared humanity,
yeah,
spaces where autistic people can feel seen and soothed and secure and safe,
yeah,
where they're heard and understood. And it's not about, and I don't know if you've noticed this, when I first was assessed and diagnosed, was so happy to read memoirs that women had written about
mm,
autism. And there's been a shift in the literature now that autistic people are writing like how to do autism, how to cope with this, I don't want that. I don't want
yeah,
to be told how to be
yeah.
a better autistic person, how to
Yeah, that's a
manage
really,
autism.
interesting distinction, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I just want to know that you understand that this makes sense, that this is valid humanity,
yeah,
and that I it's time to embrace who I am and
yeah,
be who I am. So anything that doesn't do that, that's not therapeutic.
yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting you're saying that because I've read the memoir of Fern Brady, who's a Scottish comedian
Yeah.
who's autistic, and Bianca Topes as well, who's an autistic. I think she's a web designer, but she blogs about her autistic experience as well, and they made a book from it. And yeah, I found those both so much more interesting actually than yeah your typical books about autism. So yeah, it's a really interesting distinction. I hadn't really thought about that. So
It reminds me, of something we were talking about before we actually started doing the interview. And it's that I feel a call to write my story.
yeah,
I have a sort of I have, a special interest in autism and, late diagnosed women and aging in autism, but I've always also had a special interest in theology. I love this
Oh,
study.
wow.
I
Yeah.
Yes, it just makes me so happy. And it had, and my personal story, has that theme in it. And so, but whenever I start thinking about doing that, I get so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I can't articulate this.
Yeah.
There's so much complexity to my existence. I
Yes.
tried I tried to
Yeah.
explain this to the person who was testing me, that I experience life, I don't know if you relate to this, kind of holographically, all at once, everything is coming in, but not just time in this moment. I
Yeah.
experience time past, time present, and time future,
Yeah,
all
it does make sense.
holographically at once and
Yeah.
visually.
Yeah.
So I could see movies going on all the time on every level from the past, present, and it's very to process it, to even explain, like, I'm telling you, and you're like, yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make perfect sense to most people. So it just,
Really?
yeah,
Gosh.
even
Yeah, I don't know that I've tried to explain it like that to anybody else, but that makes sense to me. Yeah. Yeah. And also because well, we spoke earlier that I'm quite interested in writing and illustrating a book about events in my life as well. But again, it's how do you pull all these threads together when all of the information is just there? It's about trying to sift through it all and what's important to include, what isn't. It's so difficult, and I know exactly what you mean. It's just all there and present, and how do you put that down on
it
on paper? It's
well,
difficult.
especially because we also have communication differences.
Yeah.
And there's that double empathy thing where you and I, it's like, of course. Anything
Yeah.
you say, it's like, of course, that makes perfect sense. But try to say that to somebody neurotypical, and they're like, you know,
Yeah.
they don't
Interesting.
experience the world that way. So I think for both of us, it'll be interesting to see over the next maybe decade,
Yeah.
if we're
Yeah.
able to do it in a way that we can feel I have truthfully and effectively communicated my lived experience in this creation.
Yeah. Okay, then what should an autistic person look for in a good therapist?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think it's almost the same answer.
Yeah.
Somebody who's autistic,
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody who, if not that, somebody who really understands the lived experience of autistic adults who
Hmm.
are, if you're late diagnosed like us, because there's so many layers of trauma and complexity and communication. So if you're not with somebody who's autistic, there's that double empathy issue where
Yeah.
you can kind of, I could use my skills as a counselor and I have for 40 years with people who are not autistic, because that's a gift, to be able to provide soothing, seeing. As an autistic person, I have the skill of being able to sort and funnel lots of information into a conceptualization that makes sense to somebody. That's just
Hmm.
something I'm given. Like, you could look at Ringo Starr and know him somehow in your heart, and then with clay, of all things, create a depiction of him that captures him. And
Yeah.
in your own soul, like, you picked up the Ringo and you were like, there's something not quite, to me, it's like, oh my gosh, Ringo, hi, how are you? I feel like I'm with Ringo, but I mean, and that's that ability to take in that information and sort it out and then create a whole, like a gestalt. And you do that, and that's what I do in therapy with people, that ability to conceptualize. But no one's been able to conceptualize me,
Mm.
you know? And
Yeah.
so, except other autistic people. So I
Yeah.
think we have to be careful when we go into counseling, and it relates to things that you've shared. Your counseling hasn't been helpful for you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It hasn't been at all, because people haven't seen you. People
No,
weren't able
I
to.
really struggled. I think I've seen, my memory's dreadful, but I think there's two that come to mind. The first was a really posh woman. And I just, she made it, well, I don't know that she made it clear that we were just completely different people, but it was obvious we were completely different people. And I just knew that she wouldn't be able to relate to anything that I was going to say. So I'd go into these sessions and lie about how all right I was feeling, basically, because I just wasn't prepared to go deep with her because I just felt it was a waste of time.
It wasn't safe.
No, no. And similarly, I then had a CBT counsellor through the NHS. They were both through the NHS. And I don't actually remember too much of our sessions other than I didn't want to go to them really, but I did go. And on my last session with him, he said, why are you here? I thought we'd kind of dealt with everything. So I was just like, is this what counselling is? Why do people talk about
Mhm.
it so positively? Because I just don't understand.
Right.
And I then saw a hypnotherapist, and that again was well, it was interesting because I think our first few sessions were okay. I liked the fact that I didn't have to give any eye contact because I was lying down with my eyes closed, so that was a plus. But yeah, it was weird in the end. I felt like there was a bit of a weird vibe between us in the end. I I I don't know. I just yeah, it started to feel a bit odd in the end. So that wasn't helpful either. And that was it. I just thought, you know what, I'm kind of done. This isn't
Yeah,
working.
that's right. It can't be with somebody who's like, I'm the expert and you're
Mm.
coming and I'm going to help you.
Yeah,
No, no, it's
yeah.
got to be, here we
It's
are,
collaborative,
two,
surely,
we're
you know.
both human. Right,
Yeah,
I'm not, you're the expert on you.
mm,
You're taking out your pearls and you're sharing with me, and together we're going to bring soothing and compassion and loving kindness to your world so that you can
yeah,
feel safe out in the world being you, not
yeah,
fixing you, not, masking you. And we all have to mask out in the world. And I'm not talking about Uta Fritz way, like we all mask. No, you have no idea, what
yeah.
masking is when you're autistic. And you
Yeah, try
can't just.
talking to some autistic people, you know. Yeah,
Right. So I think it gets down to, and finding somebody ideally who's autistic. I think therapy, counseling can be really effective. There is no counseling that you take certain models that they have CBT, DBT, acceptance and commitment. There's 300 to
yeah,
500 therapy models. So that should
yeah,
tell you something right there. Um, Nothing has been formatted for autistic people. Nothing.
yeah, yeah.
But
That's a good
autistic
point to
people
remember.
intuitively provide safe holding for one another.
Mm,
We're
yeah,
therapeutic. So, the comment area after your videos, where people are like, this is happening for me, and other people are commenting and you're coming back, and that's therapeutic. There's a
yeah,
lot of things that are therapeutic that aren't therapy. And
yeah,
then there's therapy that's therapeutic, that's mainly providing a place where we're safe, soothed, seen, and secure. As
yeah,
we are, not as we should be. We could stem, we could color, we could be associative in our thinking and go all over the place. And somebody isn't trying to correct us to be,
yeah,
a normal human being.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Um, you've told me about your love of creative journaling before. What does creativity mean to you?
Oh gosh.
You're
I think
smiling already, you
I
know.
know it's my life. Creativity is that. I have to close my eyes for this because
Yeah.
it's such a living, it's creativity is that flow state we get in
Mhm.
where for me, it's like rivers, again, rivers of colors and butterflies and blue sky. It's dancing along. I think as an autistic person, I'm very childlike. I'm not saying childish. I'm saying childlike.
Yeah, I'm
You
the same. Yeah.
I wake up and it's like everything's new.
Yeah.
Part of that's my executive functioning problems. I feel like I'm about 7 years old in the world, in terms of this childlike wonder.
Yeah.
Um, so, creativity is like my real, authentic, genuine self being. And
Yeah.
I need color and drawing and writing, to express my soul. And that's what
Yeah.
creativity is for me.
Lisa, I wonder, because this is a video that I want to do at some point. I am obsessed with certain colours, and I don't know if you have anything similar going on. For me, it's like orange and teal and duck egg blue. I find I get almost like a therapeutic response from being surrounded by colour and colour that I deeply connect with. And I don't know if that means anything to you.
It does mean. I mean,
Yeah.
and I know some autistic people have synesthesia where,
Yeah.
I don't have
No, I
that,
don't.
but
Yeah.
I have what you're talking about, and it's why all day I have an art book next to me, and
Yeah.
I'm expressing myself in color. I
Yeah.
know in my soul what that color means, and I
Yeah.
know that I'm connecting with my soul and, with the greater truth through that certain color.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
almost like a stimming quality I get from just being visually absorbed in a color. I love it so much, and I don't think I've seen any conversation on this at some point, but I don't know even if there's any research out there to discover about this. But it is an area that I'm really interested in because I do. It's almost like I want to consume color. It's just like yeah, but only colors that I really deeply connect with. So
right.
yeah, it's really interesting.
So interesting. There's
Yeah,
almost like a quality of music and truth and
yeah,
purity and life and, just these certain colors. Like, I'm seeing that there's a certain blue that is like, and a
yeah,
yellow. And yeah,
yeah,
that we
yeah,
can be ourselves in those colors.
yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you can relate actually, because
Oh,
I've
I
not spoken
totally
about
relate.
that before
I
with
know, and I
anybody.
always have color around me. I have to
Yeah,
have palettes of color that and
beautiful.
paint and that I could grab so that I can express.
Yeah,
And one of the frustrations I have as somebody who is not extremely gifted the way you are with art is that I can't match veracity, my need for truth,
mm.
with my art completely because it can't be perfect.
No, I know what you're saying. I do. I do. I think it takes so long to develop a visual language that represents you and who you are. And I'm still on that journey. And particularly now I've had to put clay away and I'm trying to relearn how to draw again. Whether that be pencil and paper or digitally on the iPads. I'm really trying to learn a visual language through a new media, and my truth isn't there yet, but I'm kind of on my way, really. So I do understand. So, can you tell me one thing you love about being autistic?
Uh-huh. Well, one thing I love about being autistic is is the kind of intense. Uh, I don't know if you ever read Strangers in a Strange Land. Not that I recommend that book, but
No,
there's this word grok when
right.
a person gets another person. Like one thing I love about being autistic is the shared understanding and connection we have. There's
Yeah,
such, at least, you know, for people who are autistic level 1, everybody's different.
yeah.
We're in that category. And for people to say we don't have empathy or we don't connect with other people, I mean, are you kidding?
I
I
feel
love,
everything.
I know. I mean, have you ever,
Yeah,
it's like you feel so intensely connected,
yeah,
it's so misunderstood. So one thing I love about being autistic is other autistic people.
Yeah.
that I connect with. Another is just the intensity of my experience. My experience is so intense in this world. Sometimes it's just unbearable, but
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just beyond brilliant. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm in this illuminated place of light that is almost unbearable, but it's ecstatic too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not all the time, but a lot of the time.
What a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful answer.
Mm.
um, and finally, a bit of a fun question. Would you rather go to a theatre or a museum?
No, I would not rather go to a theater or a museum. I would rather go to this beautiful, secluded, natural place where there's no threats of anything, and I could, like, see animals and talk to them or just somehow connect with
Yeah.
them and sit by a brook and have the perfect paint and capture it and talk to, my soul and God and everything else, and yeah, that's where I
I
would rather be.
I think that's a much better place to go to, and I'd join you in there any day of the week.
You would fit. You're there for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and it was such a delight to talk to Liesl, and it really felt like we'd spoken numerous times before, as it did actually with Neil over at Autistic Not Alien when we did a collab not so long ago. And just as a side note, you've no doubt noticed I'm using a teeny tiny mic today for the intro and outro on this video. It's really just for a test, so I'd love to know what you think of the sound quality and whether it's something that I can use occasionally on the channel. So thank you for watching. Give it a like if you got this far. Comments would always be appreciated, and if you don't know what to say, leave an orange heart down below for friendship, and I'll see you again soon.